Hello, strangers. Back again for another creepy, terrifying tale, are we? Well, today's story is probably going to terrify you. Or is it? That is the question now. So, today's story is called The Werepig. Come along and listen if you're not too scared. Greed. The greed of people. It's disgusting. It's so bad. People just want more and more and more. Like greedy little pigs all eating from a trough. It's so bad people eat into their seams, ripping their clothes. So their skin almost looks at the bursting point. I understand that food is good. It's delicious. And some people use it to help them with their comfort. And I get that, I really do. I have been in that situation. I was just like that. Until I heard this story you're about to hear. It just frightened me too much, and I changed my ways. Now let's find out if this will change your ways. Now listen up carefully now, because the story is about to begin. This story happens like nearly almost every story. Yes, at a restaurant called Penny's, where you can pile your plate up as much as you like for only $17.99. It was a dirty little restaurant with a small entrance, black and white tiles across the floor. It was sticky, and flies would always buzz round in circles in the air. Karen was up getting her second plate of food, plate piled high with sausages and pizza, chips and chicken wings, and barbecue pork ribs. Her pile on her plate was heaped as high as she could manage to carry it. Karen was very depressed with her life. This was her reward. She decided that food was a way of happiness. Well, she didn't have any friends or a boyfriend. She worked in an office answering phones all day in a little boxed off area. She just got in there and got on with her work. No one would talk to her. She would just see them laughing and pointing. They would just stare at her, looking disgusted. This had made Karen's life very hard. She felt like a big letdown. Her own mother wouldn't even talk to her anymore. And when she did, she would just always say that Karen needed to lose weight. All Karen had was this one night. Tuesday night, every Tuesday, down at Penny's, to have that one thing made her happy. Yes, and that was delicious food that filled her and warmed her heart. The flavors, the smell made her feel satisfied. This Tuesday, she heard the staff talking. They were closing the restaurant next week, from what she overheard, and they had to get rid of all the food. Karen went up to fill her plate for the third time, waddling over the few steps away from her table to get more food. She walked to the main table piled in food. She couldn't help but ask the lady. She couldn't help but ask the member of staff, the one helping her shovel the food onto her plate. "Will you really be closing?" said Karen. The woman replied, "Yes, sadly. Would you like beans?" Karen felt so unhappy, she just nodded. She didn't even answer back. She just went over back to her table and sat down. In her mind, she was having a meltdown. Even her favourite restaurant was going. Why is this happening to me? She kept saying in her head while shoving her mouth full of food. She finished her plate and licked it clean. All of a sudden, she thought to herself, with a thin body, it was beautiful. Everyone smiled at her. She had loads of friends and a boyfriend. She left the restaurant, and as she walked past, she spotted herself in a shop window reflection. Doom then hit her. She was never going to be thin or attractive. Why am I like this? Why am I a fat, unattractive woman? I have nothing, and I'm still hungry. Poor Karen just kept on thinking bad things in her mind. She went to Greg's. She was still hungry. She brought 10 jam donuts. She went and waddled and got on her bus home. As soon as she sat down in the bus, she began to gobble up her donuts, one after the next. Then all of a sudden, the bag of donuts was empty. Karen then just noticed her stop was next, so she pushed the bus button. Ting! She tried to get up, but she was stuck. She had to use all of her strength to get herself up. She started to sweat as she yanked herself free from her seat. She waddled to the front of the bus. Then some teenagers were standing behind her. He was with a friend laughing. "Holy shit, bruh! You seen this fat fuck?" The laughter continued until the bus stopped. Karen stepped off the bus. The boys got off the bus too. Karen felt slightly relieved as the bus pulled away. But then the teenage boys turned towards her and they both pushed poor Karen over. Karen rolled over onto her back like a large boulder. The boys both laughed. "Ha ha! Look at that big fat overweight pig! I bet you can't even get up, bro." They both spat on her and ran away. Karen started to cry. She was rolling round trying to get herself up. Her emotions were crushed from the inside. All she kept on thinking is, why me? Why me? She managed to reach the bus shelter sign to try and have something to hold on to get up, tears running down her face. She waddled slowly home, but as she got there, she noticed her door was open. She started to cry again. She waddled slowly to the door and peered in. Her home was a mess. Paper and clothes, letters everywhere. She looked at the lock on the door and she was so shocked by the teenager boys pushing her over. She couldn't be bothered to be dealing with the police right now as well. She walked in and closed the door and kicked over all the things from the floor to the side so she could pick her TV up from the floor. She laughed to herself. Well, it was an old 20-inch TV. Who was going to steal that? She thought it quite amusing. She sat in her chair. She'd had enough. All she could think about was food. She got out the takeaway leaflets. I should treat myself. I've had a bad day. I think Chinese. Yes, Chinese. Yes, Chinese is my favourite. Her place was such a mess. So she decided to move the chair close to the door so she could just sit and not move. She ordered her favourite food. Ribs, battered prawns, battered beef, noodle egg special. Ooh, I have 2 of them. And chips and curry sauce. Oh yes, and we can't forget the bottle of cola now. After she hung up the phone, she remembered about a cheesecake in her fridge. I hope them people didn't take my cheesecake, at least, she thought to herself, while huffing and being out of breath while walking to her fridge. She opened the front door on the fridge. The cheesecake was smashed up, but it had some strange blue crystals on the top. She took it out feeling sad. She walked over to the kitchen drawer and got a fork. She began to eat it. not caring about it being broken. She turned on the TV. She needed to eat this cake now. She ate the way through the cake while waiting for her Chinese to be delivered. After she finished the cake, poor Karen started to itch. The itching got worse and worse. It felt like 1,000 massive ants had bitten Karen. Bumps arose all over her skin, her back, her legs. She was so hungry, much hungrier now than before. More and more bumps came up on her body, burning and itching. She waddled over to her mirror. It was smashed to pieces. She bent over and picked up a piece of mirror. As she bent over, her back snapped. Big, wiry hair started to grow out of her legs and her hands. Her toes were turning black. Her face started to change. It mutated. There was now a snout. Her fingers started to go hard, slowly changing into hoofs. She was now a pig monster. She was now a werepig. It all happened so quickly. The doorbell rang. She was so hungry she charged at the door. She smashed into it with her head. The door swung open. The delivery driver looks at her. Is this like a fancy dress party
or something?
You look like a fat pig. Fucking hideous creature. Karen got angry, and she was so hungry. She just bit into the delivery man's face. He started to scream. Karen jumped at him. He fell, his head cracking straight on a concrete flower pot. Karen is so hungry she just sits on the floor, eats all the Chinese food, pushing it into her mouth with her hoofs, grunting loudly, with her just on the doorstep, blood all mixed in with her Chinese food. She then just moves on to the body, not even caring about what she's doing. She just finds his flesh even more delicious, even better than all the food she had eaten that day, the rich smell of human blood. She sat there just for a good hour, but now she could smell something. But this wasn't food. It was the smell of the person that trashed her house. She was amazed she could smell it. Was this a superpower thing or something? She followed the smell. She could feel the wet, cold blood on her face and around her mouth and all over her big snout, but wanted to find out what that smell was. She got up, waddling around, picking up and smelling the cloves, then walked over towards the door. The smell was getting stronger. She got on all fours and started to run on her new formed pig trotters while she was grunting and squealing. The smell got very strong near her house. She bashed down the door with her head. There was a man sitting on the floor with a needle in his arm with heavy metal music playing. Karen stood up. You messed up my house, didn't you? The man was horrified, his eyes wide open, and his mouth. Karen didn't wait for him to answer. She was just too hungry. She charged at him with her head, and his stomach smashed open like a watermelon. Karen then could begin her meal. He stopped screaming after a few minutes. Karen was eating him away. The hunger was the only thing on her mind. Karen licked her piggy lips. All of a sudden started to think about them pesky teenage boys from the bus. And before she even knows it, she's at the bus stop. She could smell that smell again. That's the boys from earlier, she thought to herself. Her stomach was now aching from hunger. Karen spots a shine of silver. Then she can hear them. Yeah, the fat bitch from earlier. She's probably crying like a baby now, innit? Ha, fat fucking cow. Fucking hell though, bro, They were on their bikes, just half a mile away. Karen runs with her new trotters, runs with the clicking on the road. She felt powerful, in control for the first time in her life. Still, the hunger was way too much. Karen runs and knocks them over while they're on their bikes. She laughs a grunty laugh. She bites one of the boys' legs. It tastes amazing. The other boy's laying on the floor and he starts screaming. Karen sits on him. The screams stop as she can hear him gasping for his breath. The other boy just passes out from shock. She eats his entire leg and then starts on his face. That is the best part after all. Blood everywhere. Karen feels amazing. She ate and she ate and she ate. But for some reason she was still unsatisfied. She looks down at the boys. They were just a pile of bones now. Her stomach rumbled. As she trotted off, she remembered the closing time for the all-you-can-eat buffet was at 10 o'clock. It was getting dark, and without even thinking about it too much, she was on her way. All of a sudden, Karen started to hurt. There was more cracking sounds, more wiry hair growing through her skin. She was aching all over. She was growing bigger. Her movement seemed to slow down. Then she could hear even more weird sounds coming from under her skin. The pain of the hunger was too much. What was happening to her? She arrived at Penny's. She burst through the door, squeezing her way down the small entrance and squealing in excitement pushing her way through the small entrance hall. The management yelled and ran out back to call the police. The police laughed at the manager on the phone. Pig? In your restaurant? Ha, you're having me on, sir, aren't you? The manager from the restaurant begged the police to come, but wasn't too sure if they would or not. Karen was in heaven. She ate all of her favourite foods. She was all alone, just to sit and feel her face. Then she finished everything. She could smell people. Oh, pudding, thought Karen. But as she got up, 3 police officers were standing in the hallway with guns. They all looked shocked and confused, mouths all wide open. One of the officers shouted, "What the fuck is that?" Karen stood up, grunting and squealing. Karen's stomach was rumbling. Her anger was built right up inside of her. She turned towards them and said, "It's me, Karen," while there was saliva running from her mouth. She got shot in the head. Bang. Poor Karen, hey? Maybe she should have been a bit more careful about what she was eating. Let's hope you learned something from this story today. If you see a fat person, maybe you should be nice. You'll never know. One day, they might turn into a werepig and come and get you for their revenge. Thank you so much for coming along to listen to my story today. I hope I did scare you this time. And don't forget, I'll be here for another story next week. Have a horrible day. Have nightmares. Please subscribe if you want more. because there will be more, and it's just gonna get worse. Goodbye.